Good morning, everyone. I am a sole replacement for Emily, who unfortunately couldn't be here. But instead of talking about cyborgs, I'm going to talk about televisions and an hour later. So let's get started. Hi, I am Potch, and while right now I'm a presenter, you probably recognize me from my 30-second role in the TV show Startup Silicon Valley, which appeared on the Bravo network. Or you may recognize me from the time I appeared in the background for the very short-lived program, What Would Brian Boitano Make? I swear this is real, and that is me right there in the hoodie waiting to eat some delicious lumpia. So when I'm not glazing myself across the small screen, I am sometimes in the warm, silky glow of a big screen. I was definitely a child of television, which is not to say that I never went outside, but if you would like to come to the discussion track and discuss the finer points of all 90s Nickelodeon programming, we will likely run over time. So I somehow cured myself of Stick Stickly's thrall and got a job at Mozilla, where I have been a developer advocate for the past few years and was a web developer full-time front end before that. Mozilla is all about promoting the free web and choice and innovation on the web. So I'm actually not going to be spending a whole lot of time stumping here for Firefox, but I am going to be talking about how awesome web technologies are, which should be an easy sell in this room, I'm hoping. But first, we're going to go back to several years ago when one day the manager of our team came in and said, I bought some TVs and we're going to hang them on the wall. And we said, well, what are we going to do with the TVs that you've hung on the wall? He said, well, we're just going to put some dashboards and stuff on there. And sure enough, someone came in and we hung the TVs on the wall, and we didn't have anything to plug into them, so we grabbed a Mac Mini and ran two weird cables, one for each port to each television, and now we had two TVs on the wall. At first, we really didn't know what to do with them, so we built a couple really simple dashboards that told us whether our Jenkins builds were dying or whether GitHub was up. At the time, this was not as much of a foregone conclusion, so it was important. They've improved immensely. And over time, we realized that the true purpose of this TV was clear. Animated cat GIFs and writing a robot that would automatically play Cookie Clicker for us so we could go back to our jobs. Based on the success of these TVs, which we called the Crimson Twins after a couple of the villains from G.I. Joe, they said we were building a brand new office down the road, and we want to put TVs on the walls everywhere. And you have had some experience putting stuff on TVs, so it's your problem now. So we sat down and we built a classic second system, which was twice as complex and half as useful out of the box, called Corsica, which has since improved immensely. Corsica is a system for taking a bunch of random iframes connected to WebSockets, wherever they may be, and sending a bunch of URLs to those WebSockets and potentially transforming the data that goes through them. So if you give it a URL, it displays a URL, but you can also write plugins and say, if I send you the word XKCD, display today's XKCD comic. Or if I send you a video, put it in a full screen player and then advance to a new item afterward. So we built out this system and we actually started using it in Mozilla's Mountain View office. And in general, after a couple of years, it's become sort of just a standard expected thing in all of our offices that there are just TVs displaying stuff. And that stuff usually breaks down into one of three categories. The first is regularly scheduled programs. This is things that we've decided we want to display on the televisions. Frequently health of various websites or locally relevant information, such as what's for lunch. This was yesterday's lunch menu and today, Friday's pizza and wings. What's the current driving time to various places in the Bay Area and whether you can expect to have a delay waiting for your train. We also have internal stuff for if you want to refer a candidate for a role, open roles. We are hiring a senior release manager. Mozilla is a great place to work. You should apply. We also have what we call public access programming. At first, I built a lot of these little, simple informational displays, and people came up to me and said, well, I want to put stuff on the TV. So we took all of the configuration in Corsica, and we've actually put it entirely in version control. So this is on our public GitHub instance, and anyone can submit a pull request. It won't make sense unless you really work in our office. But you can see that we have a whole list of things that that are displayed on our ambient displays in the office. All kinds of things ranging from the simple informational displays to weather to something advertising our work week in London that's coming up in 2 weeks. And we built a bunch of tools to make it easy for anyone to put content on the TVs. Not everyone knows how to build a website, and not everyone knows how to build a TV-friendly website, though after this talk, hopefully you will have a better idea. So we built some simple things like the G-Slide plugin, which just takes a Google slide deck, picks a random slide, and puts it on the television. This means that anyone who knows how to make Google Slides can make stuff that shows up in our offices. This is great for our finance team, who puts all kinds of information about how much we're spending on bananas, and our recruiting team, which before we switched to the automated dashboard had a simple deck of open positions. It was really important for us that anyone who wanted to could get content on there. After a while, the engineering teams took notice that they could put their own content on the TV, and we have this number, this set of numbers that comes up every couple minutes. And I'll tell you what, when your executives walk through the office and they say, hey, why are there 5 bugs blocking release of beta? That number goes to 0 a heck of a lot faster. So those carryover regressions, don't worry about those. They're not that big of a deal. Also, information like what's shipping right now. Sometimes what's in our code base is not what's currently on our release channels, and it's really useful for promotional reasons to know exactly what version of Firefox is on every release channel. This is grabbed from last night. And for instance, how often does code that is landed on the master branch of Firefox have to get backed back out? We actually had a pretty good week this week. For the most part, things passed all their tests. So people have really embraced the ability to just put information on the TVs, put it in front of people they need to. And occasionally, we still like to put some GIFs up there. So we have what we call on-demand programming, where you can either, there's actually a tablet in our common area, and you can walk up and say, oh, I want you to tell me right now, what's on the lunch menu? Are there any open electrical vehicle chargers? What's the current commute time? Or the most popular button in the entire office, the puppy button, which puts up a random puppy GIF every single time you press it, and puts up a little party sign every 500th time it's been pressed, which has happened a lot. It's been said that the puppy button is the greatest contribution I've ever made to Mozilla, which is okay. But it's really nice to watch someone walk through stressed right before a meeting, walk up, hit the button, smile, and then move on their way. It's tiny little endorphin injections throughout the day that I feel pretty proud of. We also have an extension that lets you take an image and select a television and just go throw it over there, or any URL that can be easily iframed can go up to the TVs. What up? So a question we get a lot of the time still, people come in, they say, so my team wants to make what we're doing more available, and I built a website. How do I get it on the TV? And the first thing I say is, well, you need to make sure it looks good on the television. So we sit there and we take their website and we put it up on the television. And I give them a couple pieces of advice, especially if they have some web development background. And the biggest thing is the 10-foot display. There's an expression, 10-foot user interface. And the 10-foot user interface merely means what is readable from 10 feet away. The first instinct people have is that anything can go up on, as long as it's a big screen, doesn't matter if it's far away, and that's rarely true. This diagram, actually, which comes from Google TV's awesome how to design for television site, can kind of show you what we're talking about. If you take out your mobile phone right now and just kind of hold it in your hand, and then hold it up against that projector, you're going to see that they're actually about the same size. Your phone's going to overlap the projector, which means that TVs are just far away mobile phones you can't touch. This is a surprisingly limiting piece of information, but does mean that all of that work we spent building mobile websites is going to pay off. Most importantly about how to style things for small displays. And this is when I have to apologize that even though this is ScotlandJS, I'm going to spend a couple moments talking about some CSS stuff. So you can quickly prepare for the next talk. We'll be right back. The big thing is viewport units. Raise your hand if you're familiar with viewport units. Cool. The hand, it's about half, maybe a little over half. Viewport units are an amazing thing that is now available in all modern browsers, and I think IE maybe 10 plus. They are resolution independent CSS units. No matter whether you have a 1080p screen or a 720p screen or a 480p screen or a tiny phone in your pocket, they always mean the same thing. 1 VW is 1% of the viewport width, always. It's really nice. 1 VH is 1% of the viewport height, always, no matter how big that is. It might be a tiny little bit on a phone, it might be a couple inches on a television. 1 VMin is 1% of the minimum of your viewport width and height, and 1 Vmax is 1% of the maximum of the viewport width and height. Using this information, you can say, actually, I'm going to just give you a demo. My slides are built using viewport units. And I can just kind of shrink this nice and down, tiny, 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 tiny. And because I set my font size to be based on viewport units, no matter how small I make my slides, even though they're HTML, they just shrink like an image. It's really, really, really powerful. If you haven't started playing with viewport units, it behooves you to do so, even though this is a JavaScript conference. The other thing is media. Did you know you can target televisions with media queries? Actually, no, you can't. This is actually in the spec, and with the exception of some very, very, very small exceptions, no one actually implements media type television. Most TVs are running a hospitality browser, which is an old version of WebKit that doesn't know what media queries are, and most newer browsers are usually connected to your TV just via HDMI and have no idea that the display they're talking to is a television. We would love to fix this, and I'm hoping we do, but unfortunately you can't easily target TVs. However, you can detect resolution, you can detect default user agent font size, and there's some ways you can get around that. However, an awesome media query is the aspect ratio media query. You have the ability to say, when my, for instance, I'm gonna go back to my slides, when my slides are on a screen that is wider than 16 by 9, I'm going to grab a resize handle, they are 100% tall and some dimension wide, and when my screen is narrower than a 16 by 9 display, my slides are 100% wide and some small dimension tall. And so using a media query, I can switch off at that transition and always get that nice letterbox effect. You can maintain an aspect ratio in your content by detecting what the viewport is and applying padding in the right location. All right, now we're transitioning back into JS land. If you did not know, you can evaluate every media query, including the television one, which won't help you, from JavaScript using the window.matchMedia command, and that will return an object that contains matches, true or false, or partially matches, depending on how complex your media query is. So you can programmatically determine the dimensions and layout and aspect ratio of your television and have your code do some slightly different things depending. The other secret to making a really good TV site is accessibility. I don't know if you've ever been in a room with bright lights and a projector, but sometimes text can be a little bit low contrast, or maybe the only way you can interact with your television is a remote with 4 buttons, up, down, left, and right. You're gonna really, really be glad that you have focusable elements with focusable styles when you're moving around between all of the interactive elements on your page, because it's the only way you will ever know that they're interactive. So having a div with an on-click attribute is not gonna help you very much. In addition, keyboard accessibility is massively important when you have something that's as simple as a D-pad. Opera, which is now still built on Chromium, still offers what's called Spatial Navigation, which is something that they've always offered, and it's sort of a feather in their cap. It's the ability to, using the arrow keys, actually navigate around a web page in 2 dimensions as opposed to just tabbing in order. Firefox actually we're working on an additional spatial navigation libraries where you can say, everything with a tab index in this page, let me actually move in 2 dimensions between these 2 things. So the rudiments of building a good TV interface are rooted in the same thing, the same rudiments that people need when they have limited access. Everyone needs accessibility eventually. Sometimes when you're holding your phone with one hand, you need a one-hand friendly UI. Sometimes when you're in dim light or low contrast or your battery's dying, you need a high contrast display. Accessibility is for everyone, and the reason it's a best practice, it ends up making websites that fall back and fail over gracefully for those moments where you're not in front of a giant laptop or a perfectly charged cell phone. So always set your tab index, always make sure you use ARIA roles, always have, allow keyboard navigation if you have a JS-powered widget. It's only going to benefit you when someone accidentally types the URL to your project into a television, even though you were never intending it, and they have a good experience and are delighted, as opposed to going back to Netflix. So how do I get web content on a television? The nicest way is using the built-in browser, because it's always there. But as I mentioned, it's frequently based on a really old version of WebKit that has no knowledge of modern web standards, or is running on a 1-penny CPU and really can't paint a modern web page without falling apart. If you can track them down, there's a line of Firefox OS-powered televisions with fully modern web browsers baked in, made by Panasonic. They've only made 2 models so far, and I'm not sure if they're going to make more. However, if you can track them down, you have a great modern web browser. So that leaves everything else. We've got the Chromecast. The Chromecast is a fabulous way to throw random web pages up to televisions, and you can build receiver applications. However, you can't throw a random web page to a Chromecast. You need to build a customized receiver application, register with Google, get all the proper keys, get it approved, and then only then do you get a special custom namespace that you can use to display your content. It's potentially worth the effort if you know you're going to build something for a TV, but it can be a little bit cumbersome to go through that process when you're just trying to take an existing website and make sure it works on a television. There's the Amazon Fire TV Stick, which, while does not ship with a web browser, allows side loading of Android applications. So you can take your favorite modern web browser and just slip it into the Android system running on there, and now you can open any web page you want on Amazon. This is a little bit easier, but still doesn't work out of the box, which is frustrating. You can take a Raspberry Pi and put, I forget the new name of it, but Xbox Media Center or any modern browser that works on Raspberry Pi, and you can plug that into your TV. This is growing in popularity, and I expect to see more devices based on the Raspberry Pi chipset that offer some web browser functionality. Or you can do what we did, and if you have an old computer or a Mac Mini laying around, you can plug that into the TV and take a browser and make it full screen. This is probably the most expensive option by an order of magnitude, but it's a great way to start experimenting and testing things out before you have to jump through all the hoops for other solutions. So we've got a D-pad, but we want a smarter remote. How do we take up, down, left, right, and turn it into something richer? Well, most of us have a smarter remote in our pockets, and it is our cell phones. Chromecast actually does a very good job of saying your phone is how you move content to your television, but your phone is really the interface, and the television is kind of a simple receiver. Once you have a web content over there, you can actually talk back and forth, and there's a bunch of different ways you can do this. There's WebSockets, which is they're ubiquitous, they're well supported at this point, they have great fallback use cases if you're using libraries, and it's really easy to say, I have a little bit of UI on my phone, and I have a little bit of UI on my television, and doing things on my phone, I drive my television. There is Mdns, which if you're not familiar is sort of a local broadcast discovery mechanism. This is actually under the hood how a lot of these other streaming devices work. You can look around on your network and say, who else offers an Mdns service? And then if you've ever seen that little URL, something.local, you're actually just discovering other devices on your network. On Mac, it's called Bonjour. But the ZeroConf, if you play around with this, you can really easily find other URLs and other IP addresses on your local network without having to write down 4 digits and type them in. There's Dial, which is how Chromecast and other smart TVs and DLNA servers work. It's a protocol, it's a broadcast protocol that kind of works in hand with MDNS and lets you broadcast to the network, hey, I offer the following services, such as media playback or device discovery or all these things. And that's actually how the underlying mechanism by which Chromecast does. And it's really, really easy. There are dial libraries for Node. There are dial libraries for the browser. You can start experimenting with that today. There's Bluetooth, which means you don't even have to be on the same wireless network to discover your device. You just need to be near something. Web Bluetooth is in Chrome, and Firefox is working on it. And it's still experimental, but this is something you can start playing with today. Once again, Node has good libraries for Bluetooth low energy, so you can find devices near you and not have to worry about making sure you're on the same wireless network. And lastly, Webrtc, which is this awesome low latency way to set up a secure channel directly between your phone and the device you're trying to talk to. But you still need one of those other methods to fall back and start the conversation. Webrtc needs something to proxy messages between it before it'll set up a great peer-to-peer connection. So that might be Bluetooth, that might be MDNS, that might be WebSockets. One of the other technologies will be necessary, but this is an awesome way to get a secure data channel where you can take content or video or stream your TV straight up your device straight to your television. So that's a lot of stuff, and I'm going to be honest, getting TV content is still, on the web content on the television is still kind of a mess. So why fight the mess? Why is this something you should start doing now? Well, for me, the reason I got excited about web browsers on frankly, the reason I got excited about web browsers on desktop when I was first getting into programming was I could make something and other people could see it. I could take my content and my vision and it was on the screen. Something I made is on the screen that I spent all my childhood just consuming things from. Now I'm making television, and my television is a web page, but it's still television content. And that is what got me excited about television web stuff. You can just really easily say, I'm on television, which is a simple thing. And hey, check out this channel, this URL, and I made something, and it's this consumer device where everyone assumes that what comes out of your television is what other people give you, and really being able to make something and prove that it's not just read, it's read and write is the promise of the web, and it's something that I'm hoping people will start experimenting with today. And pretty soon you can say that you are also as seen on TV. So thank you very much. I'll be around to have conversation. You can check out the Corsica project and that awesome Android docs on designing for television. And I hope you have an excellent rest of your day. Thank you very much.